Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad, and to my left, or maybe your right, we have Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
Ben, how's the week going?
It's been good. Busy. I don't know how else to say it. Hit the gas pedal and go.
What have you done this week? Anything fun?
Fun?
Yeah.
This recovery thing's fun.
Oh my gosh.
Is that too cliche?
That is very cliche. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, really appreciate it. Leave us some comments. Give us some topics on things that maybe you want to see us discuss. If you're listening to the podcast form, obviously, thank you for that. You can leave us some reviews on there, 5-star or 1-star, whatever you prefer, or anywhere in between. But if you do want to leave us a 1-star, we just ask that you kind of maybe, possibly, send us an email first and let us know why you're leaving us a 1-star. That way we can at least try and fix it. It's, we enjoy doing it, but we're not masters at it. We know that there's areas in which we can improve or topics that we can discuss. So let us know. This week's episode, I think what we're going to do is just kind of a spin-off of the last episode. And we didn't release one last week because whatever, no excuses are good enough. We just didn't do it. But anyways, we want to follow up follow up from the last week's episode where we were more discussing different personalities that you can come in contact with when in treatment, when not in treatment, even just people in your everyday life, the different personalities that we run into.
Or you own those personality traits yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously if we're to the point where we can identify that we have these different types of personalities, that's half the battle, because if we can identify it, then we can obviously try and fix it or rectify it in whatever way.
Yeah, the ones that we were discussing, just to recap, this is a spinoff of the King Baby traits. And if you're not familiar with King Baby, Hazelden has a book out on it. There's workbooks, stuff along those lines, but that's where these character defects come from.
Yeah, so last week we covered a few of them, and if you don't know what those are, listen to the last episode that we released. But the first one that we want to discuss today is people that give good first impressions but have zero follow-through.
This is a good one. I was actually thinking this one through already, where, and we get this in treatment. I talk about this on the podcast all the time, the stage character. People come in, they present who they want you to believe that they are, and generally about the 3-week mark, if I had to put a number on it, their stage character starts to fall apart. We start to see the real them. But these first good impressions, people come in all hyped. I'm all about recovery. I'm here this time. We do these pre-admission screens over the phone here. We ask people their internal and external motivations for seeking treatment, and they tell us they're all in. I'm doing this for myself. I'm driven. I'm going to do everything I didn't do last time if they've been to treatment previously. But do you have anything on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could probably spend a whole episode on just this one topic. A lot of times people come in here and they want to, well, I'll reference myself, and I reference myself a lot, obviously. When I went into treatment, I knew I had an opportunity to kind of have a clean slate and to make myself whoever it is that I wanted to be, because nobody knew who I was. So if I wanted to be an ex-Navy SEAL, that's who I could have been. If I wanted to be
Tom, you can't swim.
I can swim.
Hardly.
I can too swim. Point being is we have this opportunity to create ourselves as the somebody that we want to be. And obviously I did not go into treatment telling people that I was an ex-Navy SEAL. I was never even in the military. But what I did do was understand that I have an opportunity ahead of me to basically change everything about my life. Now, people do this, and a lot of times it's a mask. They come in and they tell you and show you everything that you want to see and hear. But outside of those, like here, for instance, we can have a client that comes in, and in the 1-hour session that they're with their therapist, they say and do everything that that therapist wants them to say and do. Hey, look, I did my homework. Hey, I'm really processing the abandonment issues that I've had with my parents and yada, yada, yada. All these things. And the therapist is like, oh my, this is so great. This person is just making tremendous strides in their clinical progress. Well, there's 168 hours in a week. So, and the therapist gets 1 hour with them. So you have 167 hours that you have to kind of gauge where this client's at. And a lot of times what happens is as soon as they leave the clinical space, they're presenting as something else. And that is something that we contend with a lot in the treatment process because, listen, a lot of times, like Ben just referenced, people have been doing this 2, 10, 20 times. So they kind of know the way to manipulate things in the treatment process. But we do like seeing the people that come in and are making the clinical progress. They are doing the things that the clinician is asking them to do, completing their assignments, so on and so forth. And then when they're outside of the clinical space, they're reading, they're, journaling, they're calling people to just have conversation that are sober people. Like, it needs to match, and you have to have follow through.
That's why, too, a lot of times in 12-step rooms, one of the sayings that I'll hear, and this is not official out of any literature that we read, but people will say a lot of times the most important sign in the room is the exit sign, is what you're sharing in that meeting, or in reference to like principles that you're speaking on, that you're going to go out there and try and be a representative of. Like, don't let the door hit you in the ass, so to speak. Like, go out there and follow through. And within the treatment process, this is where the what's presented in clinical has to match, in our case, with the treatment process, what's happening at the housing stuff. Because a lot of times, like Tom's saying, this is where a treatment team is so important, because the clinicians will have their insights of the underlying issues, and then our tech staff and our people that are on the front lines at the housing at night, our house managers, etc., they get to see the behaviors, and does the behavior match what's being presented in the clinical? And that's where we all come together and say, the clinician, like Tom was saying, and we do see this, their willingness is spot on in these sessions, and then we'll fill you in what we're seeing the other 23 hours of the day, and we have to meet in the middle on that, and I have 2 points that I want to make. A lot of this, too, has to do with people having unreasonable expectations, if you will, of what they're capable of doing, I guess you could say. I'll reference SMART recovery, which is self-management and recovery training. It's like as in 12-step, it's another self-help group, if you will. But SMART recovery, they utilize SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And a lot of times people come in here saying that they're going to do all these things, but realistically, can you keep them up consistently? For instance, it would be unrealistic for me to say, with my lifestyle, having 2 kids, having to get the kid to football practice, having a full-time job, that I'm going to make it to 7 meetings a week. Like, my therapist loves to hear that. Oh, you're going to go to 7 meetings a week? But is it realistic? And with the way that my life is now, at nearly 12 years of sobriety, that is not realistic for me. Now, is it important that I make it to meetings? Yes. So I set up a reasonable goal and expectation for myself. I wanted to touch on that. And the other thing is, I'll reference my experience with 12 steps in particular. One of the things that I see a lot of times, people have a tendency to relapse with, I'll reference my sponsees. I meet up with them for the first time, and we sit down and we read the big book. And they're like, oh my God, there's reading involved with this. There's something I got to do. This feels like school. I got to attain knowledge. Nope, I'm out. Then also, when we get to the 4th step, because some of them can make it through the reading part on steps 1 and 2, and which is just the education. But when you get to the actual program, where it's time to pick up a notebook and a pen, I'm just going to call it what it is. People, a lot of times, my sponsees will be like, oh, I'm scared to look at my character defects in my past, da-da-da-da-da. The real thing that I see is they're just too lazy. Point blank, it comes time to do some work, to pick up a pen and a notebook, and they have all these excuses on why they're not doing it. But the reality of the situation, 90% of the time, if not more, I'm being generous with 90%, is that they're just being lazy and they're not following through.
That is something that I have not personally battled with, but I have the same mentality, and that's something that Ben and I struggle with when speaking with the therapist, because a lot of times the therapist will have this big elaborate reason as to why somebody isn't doing X, Y, and Z, and then our impression is, well, they're just flat out lazy. I mean, and so we get into battles with them about that, but it's okay. And I think there is validity to that. Like, I do think there is a clinical component, but my opinion is 90% of the time it's out of just utter laziness.
I understand both sides of it. I really do. I'm an open book. I'll speak honestly. I'm diagnosed bipolar 2 rhymes of blue. I get super depressed at times. And where I want to tie this in as an example is last night when I do group, we did our CrossFit group last night. Well, I had an individual sit down in my group at the beginning of group prior to the workout, and I go around and I ask, I say, we're not going to force you to work out, but it would be awesome if everybody did. And it was show of hands, who's working out today? We had one guy in the group that didn't want to work out. Now, I asked him, why not, basically, and he said, "Oh, I'm super tired. I feel depressed. I had a long day at work." And his physical presentation as well, he was slouched down in the chair, bags under his eyes, looked like he was about to fall asleep, legitimately, and looked like he did not want to be there. Now, I told the group, I said, hey, let's take a look at this individual and the way that he's presenting. And I asked him, because I want to include him, it's not like I'm going at him and shaming him, so to speak, but I asked him to give the group a clear description of how he's feeling mentally, physically, and spiritually at the moment. They were all pretty much on the low end. I said, let's do this. Let's meet in the middle. Go out there, give it a 50% effort. We do like a CrossFit type station deal where there's 10 stations and we do 2 minutes on each. I said, give it a 50% effort. If you want, skip every other station. And he agreed to do it, and I got to give him kudos for that. Well, we get back to the group room. He broke a little sweat, sits down in the group room. He's sitting up straight. His eyes are all bushy-tailed and white-eyed. Is that the saying? I think something like that. His knee was bouncing up and down, and I said to start off the group in the beginning, I said, everybody, take a look at client John Doe over here. What's his presentation right now? He looks like he's full of energy. He's smiling. Point is, I pointed out to the group right there and then. I said, we're not responsible for our addiction and having this disease, but we are responsible for our recovery. I do understand debilitating depression. People get legitimately depressed clinically. Sometimes it feels near impossible to get out of bed and to be motivated and to go do something. But I pointed out to them, if we let that defeat us, we're not going to get anywhere, and we're going to stay on this merry-go-round of addiction and depression. We have to be responsible for putting our feet on the ground and getting moving. For myself, what that looks like is, believe me, there's days I post about it on my Facebook and my Instagram. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going to the gym right now, but I'm getting myself to the front door of the gym. Get in the truck and I go. I get in there, I come out, I feel accomplished, I feel great, I have energy, I'm not depressed anymore. It gets those endorphins going. We are responsible for getting moving. Point blank.
That was good, Ben. You really drove home the point.
I'm feeling it today.
Well, that can go right into our next one, which is addictive personalities. A lot of times take things to extremes. The gym is a good one to reference here because of the fact that when young men and young women come into sobriety, again, it's an opportunity to change absolutely everything about themselves. And oftentimes they have the best motives and intentions, but with that comes kind of this extreme type approach. And something to be mindful of for yourself, your loved one, or for just somebody that we have to keep a gauge on, okay, are we just switching addictions here? And, you have the people that are out there that say, well, I'd rather be addicted to the gym than addicted to drugs. I get that. I would too. I'm not addicted to the gym. And right now, honestly, I wish that I was, because I know the way that it makes me feel and stuff like that. But right now, I'm not addicted to the gym. Ben, I would say that you are right now, in a good way.
Right now I am, yes.
But whether it's the gym, whether it's work, whether it's shopping, or whatever the case is, any of these sorts of things that we can utilize as outlets outside of drugs and alcohol, as addicts, it is very easy for us to take them to the extremes. And at what point is it detrimental? And I would even argue that AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery, Smart Recovery, these things can become addictive to a certain degree to where it can become detrimental. Ben has gotten into I don't want to say a position, but you've kind of skirted that. Like, at what point is my AA commitments too much? Is it taking away from my family? Is it taking away from other areas of my life? Although it may be helping me immensely in my sobriety and stuff like that. And then people come back and say, well, without your sobriety, you have nothing. I get it. There's we can have an answer for everything. But in the end, it is, are we going to the extremes? And a lot of times people do that. And it's our job, as just self-reflection, to be able to identify, okay, this is becoming too much and it's taking away from other areas of my life.
I think what we want people to learn is that you need to evaluate and reevaluate constantly, because life circumstances are constantly changing. And to have this idea in your head that you're going to pick this set schedule and be set for life. I see that sometimes on YouTube, and I probably perceive it the wrong way, but one that always sticks out to me, like they talk about on one YouTube channel, Mark Wahlberg's schedule, gets up at 3 a.m. every day, works out, done by 4. The guy has to have other stuff come up, in bed by 8 p.m., reads a book from 3 to 4, realistically, do you mean to tell me that guy has nothing that comes up and that schedule doesn't get interrupted? I see the point that they're trying to hit home where a schedule's important, but evaluating and reevaluating is super important. Like Tom's saying, maybe I need to go to more meetings one week because I need that. But maybe the next week I say to myself, it is taken away from my family. I reevaluate, take a step back and say, because I don't want one thing to start hurting other areas of my life. And I think that's what's important, is being able to adjust. And talking about extremes as well, because I've also seen this, like Tom's referencing, where I've had people, they're going to meetings consistently, maybe 5 a week, just as an example. And all of a sudden they're like, I'm not doing any meetings. It's taken away from my life. That's an extreme as well, completely cutting it out. It doesn't work like that. We need practice at taking our inventory, reevaluating, is somewhere else in my life falling off? And it's constant adjustments, constant trying to balance.
Yeah, and it can be something that a lot of times when we see people come into treatment and they, again, have this opportunity to change everything, well, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to stop vaping, I'm going to stop drinking caffeine, I'm going to start working out 6 times a week, 3 hours a day. I'm no longer eating carbs because I heard carbs are bad. I'm going to do these smoothie diets, yada, yada, yada. And it's crazy. You have a hard enough time putting down the drink and the drug. And a lot of times you just overwhelm yourself. And again, I encourage people, when they come into treatment, don't stop smoking. Don't try and stop smoking cigarettes or chewing tobacco right now, because right now we're working on you quitting, putting a needle in your arm. And that's going to be hard enough, let alone having to deal with trying to come off of nicotine at the same time. So anyways, if that is you and you are considering getting clean or sober, just work on that. Don't try and take on everything else and do all these other things, because you're just going to set yourself up for failure, essentially.
I don't want to get deep into it, but another one that we see, just as an example, you had mentioned shopping briefly. One thing we see with our clients a lot of times, I'll hear from a spouse so-and-so ordered $1,000 worth of stuff off of Amazon this week. I'm like, what in the world could you need $1,000 worth of off of Amazon while you're in treatment? You see that a lot of times. That gets brought up. There's always several people in the community that do that.
I mean, if you're going to do that, at least wait for like Cyber Monday, or Prime Day. I could drop $1,000 on Amazon in a blink of an eye. I did it. Just probably, I hope my wife's not listening to this. Probably, well, it was whenever Prime Day was. And granted though, for me, it's good stuff. Like, camera stuff, lighting, stuff.
I'm sure that's what they tell themselves too.
This is for you. Those of you that are watching YouTube, listening to the podcast, me sinking $1,000 on Amazon is for you.
Way to justify. I'm with you. All right.
Next one, and let's go through a couple more of these for the sake of time. People that become immobilized by anger and frustration. Go ahead, Ben.
See this one all the time, and I think this one ties into expectations. Expectations are prepaid resentments, basically. Individuals, and if I'm referencing treatment, a lot of times come in with these expectations of, and I'll just be straight up, a rock is run by human beings. We are not perfect. For instance, we have our website, which I truly believe that we do everything on our website that's represented. But as an example, for instance, we had a guy recently. Actually, this has happened a couple times. Our dumbbells were falling apart downstairs. They needed refurbished. So for a couple weeks, we've been unable to use the gym until last night again. It was just a disaster in there with this rubber stuff on. Total mess. But anyway, nitpicking, on the website and what you guys talk about with the health and fitness, that's why I came here. And well, actually, you came here to get sober primarily, number one, and get therapy. But yes, we do agree it's very important. But it's funny because they'll fixate on that. Like, I haven't got to work out and do the CrossFit group for 2 weeks. I haven't got to do that yet. And I got to tell them, hey, have a little patience. We're getting this stuff refurbished. It takes time. The gym will be open soon. We'll get enough done to get it going. But it was funny because all of a sudden, I told someone that was complaining about it that morning. I'm like, oh, funny, we're doing the group tonight. And then all of a sudden last night, everybody did work out, like I said, 100% of them. But this guy at the beginning was like, I think I'm just going to, do my own thing. All of a sudden, I could tell he was all talk that morning and just looking for something to nitpick. And at the end of the day, I believe a lot of that anger and frustration comes with not being able to take life on life's terms, again, being able to adjust and understand, like, sometimes things don't go perfectly as planned, and don't let that stop you. Sometimes people are looking for a reason to be angry and frustrated. The Big Book talks about that. There's a line in there that talks about feeling justified by worry, anger, resentment, and fear. Like, leave justification to normal men and women. We're alcoholics and drug addicts.
That's right. And it's easy to become, just stagnant. And it's funny that you say that, because it's always funny when people will be the first to give you the complaints, and then when you fix the complaint, then they want nothing to do with it, And it's like, get out of here with that crap.
He just summed up what I was trying to say in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, anyways, and they become rarely satisfied people, I mean, there's people that are just oftentimes rarely satisfied. We could do anything that you ask. If you say you want lobster tail and we give you lobster tail, next thing you want crab legs, which we don't do, just a disclaimer. But, it's just those types of people really have an uphill battle with this whole sobriety thing, because there's a saying too, it's a simple program for complicated people. People overcomplicate this stuff, and I think a lot of times it is because of just they're never satisfied. It doesn't matter what you do, what you say, they're always going to find something to just nitpick, and it's because they are incapable of looking inward, and it just comes out sideways, and it's really annoying.
Well, we're a society of more. We always want more. One thing that I can relate this to within the treatment process. We have our individuals that go from our PHP, which is our version of inpatient, if you will, forget the acronyms. We go to IOP, intensive outpatient. And the intensive outpatient level of care, that's when you start looking for work again, getting back on your feet financially, get into the workforce, get employed. I always tell our clients, because they'll come in, they'll be really stressed out that they haven't found any work, or such and such place didn't hire them because of their background, etc. They'll come in one day and be like, Ben, I got the job at Home Depot. Super excited. Awesome. I tell them right then and there, I said, you see the way that you feel right now, how grateful you are to have that job offer? Remember that, because I guarantee you 30 days from now, you're going to be complaining that you should be the general manager, that they don't pay you enough, this, that, the other. Remember how satisfied you were the day that happened, and hang on to that gratitude, if you will.
I was listening to a podcast this morning. I listen to this podcast a lot. It's called Mind Pump with Sal DiStefano, Adam Schafer, and Justin Andrews. It's the #1 health and fitness podcast. It's really good. Shout out Mind Pump. If you ever want to shout us out, it'd be freaking awesome, because they get like millions of downloads per episode. They're super duper awesome guys. Anyways, they were talking about this morning. One of them had read something about, it's called quiet quitting. And it's like this, I guess, and this has been being done a lot, but now it's got a term to it. And it's like the younger generation that are going to work and basically putting in absolute minimal efforts, knowing that they're going to get fired, but just milking it for as long as they possibly can. And now it's called quiet quitting or something. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense.
And I think you can relate that to recovery in a certain way. Like, a lot of times people have these just expectations of, well, you're going to take care of me. You know, I'm working for you and you're going to give me a paycheck, but I'm not going to work too hard. You know, and they just have this like give or take mentality. And it doesn't work that way. Like, especially for our recovery, like if you're just going to sit back and expect that you don't have to do anything and you're just going to stay sober and everybody's going to want to be around you and be your friend and so on and so forth, it does not work that way. People will draw away from you. You will find yourself isolated on an island by yourself. And maybe you enjoy that. Maybe that's something that but if that is something that you enjoy and you want to be that way, then do that. Like, just be an asshole, I suppose, and people will just stay away from you.
Well, that goes back to the old cliche. If you want to get something out of a meeting, if you want to get something out of a group, you better bring something to it. We see that all the time. Tom makes a good point with people have this expectation that we're going to take care of them, do everything for them. At the end of the day, if you don't bring your A game, your willingness, open-mindedness, honesty, we got nothing to work with. There's nothing that we can do for you.
Yeah. So I want to cover one more. And for the sake of time, let's cover one more. Or at least I want, and if you want to cover another one, Ben, we can. We have a list over here that we've been referencing, and it's a long list.
Are you going to be jumping around?
I'm jumping.
Oh, man.
I'm taking a leap.
We discussed this.
Yes.
I have control issues. Tom likes to jump all over the list. I'm like, where are you at now?
Yeah. Well, I'm jumping, and this is one that I'm very passionate about when people say, I know a lot. And that drives me crazy when I'm having a conversation with somebody or a client here and I give some sort of suggestion or feedback which has been solicited. Client comes to me and says, hey, I'm struggling with blah, 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 whatever that is. And I'm giving my feedback or giving my opinion, which you asked me for. And then you come back with me and say, yeah, I know that, but, well, if you knew that, then why did you come to me? Drives me crazy when people, and I did a short on this recently, which if you haven't watched my shorts, they're pretty awesome. right, Ben?
They're funny. I enjoy watching them make them more than actually watching them.
I did a short on this, and it's basically about constantly being a student. And you hear this a lot with like the self-help type stuff, Ed Milet's and Grant Cardone's of the world, constantly be a student. And it's so true because if I'm talking with somebody and I'm seeking wisdom from somebody or feedback, and when they talk to me and I say, I know that, I know, do I really? Am I closed off to what it is that they're wanting to say? Or do I want to put myself on like this equal playing field with them? Like, oh, you're not telling me something that I didn't already know. I'm looking for something even more, like it's just kind of weird. And a lot of times our clients do that. They think coming in here that they have it all figured out. But in reality, if you had it all figured out, what the hell are you doing sitting in treatment?
I'm with you there. At no point do I ever believe that you become an expert enough to not continue learning on that same subject matter. For instance, I can consider myself pretty much an expert on the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know that book front to back. One thing that I know, though, is I can listen to somebody else read it and break it down, and I'm hearing new ways of hearing it, and the way that they express it and new ideas behind it, or maybe something that I would breeze over at one point when I read it. Like, I'm constantly, with almost 12 years of sobriety, still learning stuff out of that book. And I've literally read that thing hundreds of times front to back. I still, on a regular basis, like there's certain people, Eric Sheets, who works with us, Rabbi Mark, who works with us. He's a group facilitator. For using them as examples, like I know that there's information that they've grasped and they know how to explain in a way that I've never heard before. Maybe it's kind of the same message, but the way that they're saying it, all of a sudden like a light bulb goes off and it clicks more than it did the previous time. Like, you're never an expert to the point where you can't continue to learn.
That's right. That is right. Ben, do you have anything else? Would you like to jump somewhere on our list, or are you about wrapped up?
No,
here?
you totally screwed up the process. I'm done with this. I quit.
Yeah,
I'm not quiet quitting.
Go to your sandbox. Take your toys and go to your sandbox. All right. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Again, if you're on YouTube, we really do appreciate it. Share this episode with somebody that you think may benefit. If you have comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com, Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. We've been getting a lot of emails, and I do want to say that I am getting, for some reason, they send them more to me than to you, Ben, and I'm getting inundated with emails. So
I like that.
What we're going to do is we're going to come up with an email that we're both going to have access to. Maybe info at realrecoverytalk.com.
I like it the way it is. Let's do this out later.
Or I need help at realrecoverytalk.com, something. I love getting the emails, but just bear with me. I'm going to get back to you. I check them every morning and reply. And just don't send me a whole book. I've been getting a lot of them that are, a whole kind of book of things, and it's just tough. So give me a few sentences of what's going on, and in there, put your phone number. If you put your phone number, I can shoot you a text, and we can connect that way, or I can just give you Ben's cell phone number, and Ben can get with you if you want to talk to Ben more than me, So anyways, again, really appreciate all of you tuning in and listening. What?
I want to get the last line in.
All right. This is it. Last line, and then we're done.
If nobody told you I love you today, we do.
That was good. We do. All right. That is it. We will see y'all later.